I'll tell you what, guys, even though it's early May, we are getting absolutely walloped by the heat here in South Florida. Today and the next couple days supposed to feel like 100 degrees in the middle of the day here, and that's when I'm out shooting the videos. So I'm going to do my best to try to stay under the shade in these next couple of videos and just keep cool, and also keep my camera cool so it doesn't overheat. I'll tell you what, I'm really looking forward to my summer road trip. I will be on the road starting the beginning of June and can't wait to escape the South Florida heat. But you know who else is getting walloped right now? Homeowners, but particularly mobile homeowners, but really it's everybody. We're going to cover how everyone is getting completely crushed right now by the ongoing and increasing expenses of being a homeowner. And we're going to start with mobile homeowners, okay? We haven't talked about people who own mobile homes or manufactured homes in quite some time, and it's something I covered extensively in the past. But the problem is just continuing to get worse, because what is happening with people who own mobile homes or manufactured homes when they have their home parked in a mobile home park? A lot of times they don't own the land that their actual home sits on, and they are at the mercy of the landlord of how much they are going to charge in rent. And the problem is getting so bad with how much people are having to pay for these mobile home lot rents that not only can people not afford those rents, but also it's making it so they can't even sell the mobile home to somebody else because nobody wants to take on these extremely high lot rents. Because if you think about it, most people who are looking to move into a mobile home park are usually doing so because they're trying to save money. You know, they're being budget conscious, and either that's all they can afford or they're doing it on purpose so they can try to save as much money as possible. So when you tell somebody that your lot rent is $1,100, $1,200, or $1,500 a month, that's like a big fat no. People are not going to buy that mobile home. The news covered one woman who has a mobile home in Ormond Beach, Florida here, and she has had her mobile home for sale for over 2 years, guys, and no takers. No one will buy this place. Why? Because the lot rent is too high. She said her lot rent is $1,100 per month, and when the new owner buys the place, it's going to get jacked up to $1,300 a month. So you know what happens is people who own these mobile homes get completely screwed because this person's trying to sell the place to somebody else, and the only way that someone's going to take on that massive liability of that $1,300 a month in lot rent, what are they going to want? They're going to want a massive discount off the mobile home to compensate for that increased amount of rent that they are going to have to pay. So through no fault of their own, it's not like they didn't maintain their house or anything like that, but it automatically makes the value of their home plummet because of how much it costs to pay the lot rent. They talked to another lady who's paying a whopping $1,500 a month in lot rent, and she says that it has gone up over $500 in the past 3 years. So it was still already $1,000 3 years ago, but it's gotten so bad that she cannot afford this payment, and she has a friend that's helping her out and is just paying her rent for her, guys. I mean, that's extremely generous. And obviously not everybody has that opportunity, but just the fact that it's come to that, where somebody else has to pay her way or this woman would be homeless, is unbelievable. And obviously the people who own these mobile home parks, they could care less. They're all being taken over by corporations for the most part. So they don't care if you're going to go homeless. They don't care about any of that stuff. If you can't pay, they'll get somebody else in there who can. It's that simple. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, this is just a Florida problem, but it's not. You know, this is happening all over the country. But yeah, some of these stories that I'm covering here are out of Florida, but it doesn't matter, guys. This kind of applies everywhere. And you know, the government here in Florida is trying to make it look like they're doing something about this, but they're really not, because the governor just signed this bill called the Mobile Home Lot Tenancy Bill. And basically all it does is it makes it so that if there's a dispute over the increase in the lot rent between the mobile home park owner and the homeowner, then they are able to select a mediator and initiate mediation to try and resolve this, okay? But this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because what's really going to come of this? Is just because you get somebody in the middle, the owner of the mobile home is going to say, oh yeah, don't worry, we're going to lower the rent now because there's somebody in the middle saying that you should. Give me a break. Which is why I'm saying it just looks like they're trying to do something about this, but in all actuality, it's just all for show, if you ask me. It's not really doing anything to help these people that are seeing these massive increases. Because even though they're gonna have this mediation, there's no guarantee or promise or cap on lowering people's lot rent. So that's still gonna be a major problem if the mediation doesn't go in the tenant's favor, which I would imagine most of these mediations won't. And here's the crazy thing when you really think about this. You know, say you have somebody that's got $1,100, $1,200, $1,500 a month lot rent. Well, that's just the lot rent, okay? That person still needs to pay other utilities like water and trash collection, electricity, their internet bill, things like that. Some people may even have a mortgage. A lot of lenders won't loan for mobile homes, but recently they just made it easier for people to get loans on mobile homes. So you do have people who have loans on these. And $1,500 a month in itself is already more than a lot of people's mortgages are across the country, you know? So gone are the days where moving into a mobile home is now the cheap solution to living inexpensively. And you got to remember, guys, like a lot of people who live in these mobile homes are also elderly. They live on a fixed income. So these major increases are not in their budget. They're not able to pay. And some people are getting luckier than others because they talked to another woman who is in Tampa, and she had her lot rent go up by $100 a month, which is nothing compared to, you know, $500 increase or more. But she says it's still too much because she's somebody who's also living on a fixed income. And when you're trying to stretch every single dollar, it might not be feasible to pay an extra $100 per month. Now, I would say that, you know, if you can't afford a $100 increase in your monthly budget for housing, then you already are living on the edge. But it's not like these people have a choice. You know, they're already retired, they're maybe disabled, you know, are not able to work anymore. So they're stuck with whatever they have from a pension, Social Security, or whatever they have left in their 401k, if they even have one. So these people with the $100 per month increase say that because of this, they're not going to be able to retire. So they're just going to have to continue working. So they're not retired yet. So they're just going to have to stay in the workforce to keep a roof over their head. So, you know, I talked about this, you know, maybe a month or two ago in a video, that this whole idea of retirement for most people in the future is completely out the window, guys. Most people are never going to make it to retirement with the way the cost of living is going in this country. Unless you're willing to relocate to a country across the world where the cost of living is half or less than what it is here, you probably won't be able to retire unless you are making, well, multiple six-figure income by now and saving half of it each year and investing in. But it's not just mobile homeowners that are feeling this squeeze. It is all homeowners, okay? Next on the chopping block are condo owners like me. Because condos and any HOA or homeowners association is basically in the same boat because of all the increases that are happening with those. But in particularly condos, okay? The news also covered a condo complex in Orlando, okay? And a lot of the owners there just got slapped with a $22,000 special assessment in order to bring their building up to having full reserves, because this is a requirement here in Florida that all condos are going to have full reserves by the end of this year. And I have covered this extensively on the channel as well, multiple times in many different videos, which is why this is going to sound ridiculous here in just a minute. Because first of all, if you think $22,000 is a lot for a special assessment, that actually isn't a lot, because there are many different condos that are getting hit with assessments much bigger than that. We're talking $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 or more in special assessments to make repairs on the building, to get these reserve funds in order on time, all kinds of things that they have to pay for. And this condo in particular here in Orlando says that their reserve fund is short $17 million, and they need to have full reserves by December 31st of this year, guys. So they have to come up with $17 million, all of the residents of this place, in that time frame. But actually, it's less time than that, because they really only have until July 31st, according to this new announcement from the condo, to come up with this money. And here's where it gets stupid, guys. And I don't mean to call people stupid, but the thing that's really stupid is that people claim they didn't see this coming. So, you own this property and you have no knowledge of anything coming down the pipeline because you're just living in your own world, living in the bubble and not really paying attention, and then these kind of things sneak up on you. Because they interviewed a guy there who said he's been living at this complex for 15 years, okay? That's a long time to be living in the same place. The first thing he said to the news is, no one saw this coming. Well, this law has been on the books since like 2022. So at least 2 years, this has been something that's going to be happening here in Florida. So if you've been paying any attention at all, you would know this has been happening. And I put these videos out. I have made at least a handful of videos on this condo crisis with all the problems, guys. And I understand that these videos won't reach everybody. They reach a lot of people, but definitely not enough to get the message out to everyone. So I at least try to do my part to make people aware of these problems and what's coming down the pipeline. But a lot of this stuff goes ignored because people are saying you're fear mongering or you're just doom and gloom or da 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 da. Well, yeah, okay. Well, now it's happening to people in real life, and I'm sure they're not thinking anything like that. They're thinking, how am I going to pay for this? That's what they're thinking. They're not thinking this is gloom and doom. They're thinking this is my reality now, and I have to come up with this 22 G's in the next 2 months. So the reality is nobody should be blindsided or surprised by this, but yet this guy says everybody who lives in this building is blindsided and surprised by this. Because no one wants to pay attention, guys. Everybody thinks they're just going to buy a property and, live happily ever after and never have any problems or worries with it moving forward. Well, that might have worked 20 years ago or before that, but not anymore. Things are changing. There's no excuse to not know about this since this law has been coming for the past 2 years. And if you're living in a condo, you could be requesting the financial documents and looking at the budget and say, okay, is there going to be a massive increase here? Are we collecting the proper amount of money in reserves? Chances are probably not. And if not, by how much are we short? Things like that, so you can get an idea of whether or not you're going to be able to afford a potential future increase or not. And then this guy that they interviewed said, no one has this kind of money. So that my question is well, what's going to happen if no one has this kind of money and this entire complex to pay for this $22,000 assessment? What's really going to happen, guys? Because this is an unanswered question that no one really knows the answer to moving forward just yet. Are they going to shut down the building if people can't come up with the money by the end of the year? Are they going to fine you and make it even harder to pay because now there's more expenses that are owed to the government for not complying on time? Are they going to give people an extension and say, oh, don't worry about it for another year? That's something that I've been predicting for a while now that I think could easily be on the table as more and more places are saying we don't have the money for this. Nobody knows yet, but one thing we do know is no one can afford this. So all the residents in this building, they have until July 31st to come up with this money. And so they have basically 2 months notice to come up with 22 grand, but not everybody has to come up with 22 grand. If you have a smaller unit, it could be as low as 11,000. Besides that, moving forward to keep the reserves healthy, they're talking about the monthly HOA fee going up by as much as $900 a month, guys. $900 a month increase, okay? Even after paying this $22,000 special assessment. Just let that sink in for a minute. This is obviously really bad news and we don't really know what's going to happen from this, but one thing that shouldn't be happening is people shouldn't be blindsided. When you own a home, I think it makes sense to pay attention to some of the laws and rules that come up with owning this particular asset. And those are the kind of things I talk about here on the channel, along with different problems we're having in the economy. If you don't know about this stuff, then you can't be prepared for when it actually comes down the line and affects you. So all these condos are having these reserve studies done, which are expensive in themselves, okay? But these reserve studies are also bogus, okay? And I'll tell you why. Because they just have, some engineers walk around the property, tap on the concrete a little bit, here and there, and then they just throw out a number and say, yeah, the building needs to have, this much in reserves without any real work going on. They could just be making this up for all we know. So clearly this is not a very accurate way to assess how much the building should actually have in reserves. And what they're doing is they are dishing out massive numbers that these buildings should have in reserves to kind of make sure that they don't get sued. Like if later on they find out that they should have needed more instead of less, then they don't want to be the company that said, well, you only need $5 million. Instead, you actually really needed $10 million. You know what I mean? So they're overestimating the costs for these reserves, and it is going to bankrupt these HOAs and condo associations.
How'd you like to pay $3.5 million for a dilapidated old house? Well, this house here is living proof of the greater fool theory, because when you look at the history of this house, it is absolutely insane. Now, somebody bought it back in 2021 for $1.15 million, unloaded it that same year for a little over $2 million. That guy ended up selling it to somebody else in 2023 for $2.5 million, but he was originally asking for $4.4 million, guys. Absolutely insane. And now the greater fool who purchased it for $2.5 million in 2023 is looking to unload it in 2024 for about $3.5 million, but so far no takers, and you're literally paying $38,000 a year in property taxes to own this dilapidated house. It's basically a hot potato that nobody wants. You know, it's being sold as empty land to redevelop, which would cost an arm and a leg, and everybody's just flipping it over to the greater fool. Well, you have been fooled.
You know, we've even talked to one of the board members of one of these condos, and they were looking at this reserve study that they received from this engineering company, and they were like, the things they're talking about on here, even things as simple as painting, they're estimating are 3 times the cost of what we actually paid to paint this building just 2 or 3 years ago. So they're way overestimating the costs, and that's a problem, because once this reserve study's done, then these buildings have to comply and come up with that amount of money, even if it's not the right amount. And then that's where it comes to people say, well, I would never buy a condo. You know, living in these mobile home parks is a ripoff, and you know, there's no privacy in a condo. I would never own anything with an HOA. You need to have your own house and your own land. Okay, well, newsflash, that's not going to save you either, and here's why. But first, I want to just say, owning your own house will give you the best shot at lowering your expenses and keeping your expenses in line with as much as you can control, but it's not going to save you entirely. When you own a house, at least what you can do is you can decide, you know, when you're going to fix what and how much it's going to cost. You can even fix things yourself if you're handy enough to do so. And there's no special assessments, because there's no HOA or anything like that to, you know, give you these surprise bills that you have to pay or you're foreclosed on. But when you live in a house, everything under your roof is now 100% your responsibility, and even outside your roof. Even say this tree right here falls on this house, whose responsibility is that? It's yours, okay? And this actually just happened to people. In fact, one woman was killed here in Florida with all these storms raging through the south in northern Florida. Tree fell on this woman's house, she's dead. So with the house, anything that goes wrong with the place, the roof, the siding, the garage, the basement, any problem you might have is gonna fall on you. So I would even argue you need to have even more money in reserves for yourself in case something happens to the house, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You can say, well, I'll just make an insurance claim. Well, good luck with that, because when you do it, not only first you got to pay your deductible, but your insurance rate will go up. With the way insurance is going right now, it's a guarantee, guys. If you make a claim on your homeowner's insurance, they're going to jack up your rates, or they'll even drop you. So that's kind of like the last thing you want to do, is make a claim on the insurance to pay for this kind of stuff. And besides all those repair costs being 100% your responsibility, homeowners are facing massive problems with taxes and insurance. I would even argue that insurance is the #1 issue that people who own houses are facing right now. So the increases that people are seeing in insurance has been monumental. I've also covered this extensively here on the channel. You know, people have been getting dropped left and right and just being left with no coverage, and any coverage that is available after getting dropped is usually anywhere between 50 to 100% more expensive than what they were previously paying. So if you're also someone who's elderly or on a fixed income, or your budget's just maxed out, you're not going to be able to afford those increases either, even though you live in a house and own your own land. Well, it happened. I knew it. It was going to be too hot today to be out here doing this. My phone just died, so hopefully I can make it through the rest of this video without it dying again. So here's the thing, guys. If you're someone who is elderly or on a fixed income, or your budget is just already maxed out, you're going to be affected by this at some point, okay? You're not going to be able to afford all these increases with your house. And then the other problem is, because of all these increases in just the things that you have to pay for, like your taxes and insurance, that prevents people from performing the necessary maintenance on their house to just keep up with the place. And what ends up happening is people defer maintenance and they don't take care of the property, and then when they go to sell it, the house is massively depreciated and it's worth significantly less than their neighbors, but they think they're going to get it because, oh, their neighbor sold their house for $1 million, but the neighbor's house is in tip-top condition. So now you're lucky if you get $700K for yours, just as an example. So by not having the budget to maintain the house ends up sucking the equity away from the home in the end, because you can't afford to keep up with the home. So this snowballs into a big problem for people. The reality is, no one's protected from this. Unless you're living in a tent under a bridge or in a van down by the river, you're vulnerable to this situation. Oh, that's right. Even if you live in the van down by the river, your car insurance might go up too much to afford the van. So I guess all these people in the homeless encampments with the tents are onto something here. So here's the reality, guys. People living in houses are just living with this false sense of security that, oh, well, you know, I didn't buy a condo, I didn't buy a mobile home, I'm the smart one. Well, not really, because even if you haven't been affected by any of this yet, I can guarantee you at some point in the future, everyone's going to be affected by this. Because of inflation, because of what's happening with insurance, everyone will get hit with an increase at some point down the road, whether it's with your taxes, your insurance, or both, or something happens to your property that you have to pay for and you might not be ready to pay for. It's just that condo owners and mobile homeowners are feeling the distress first because of outside factors. You know, with the mobile homes, it's just the fact that the people who own these parks are extremely greedy. You know, it doesn't have to be this way for them, but these parks are getting bought up by corporations left and right, and they're jacking up the rent to the moon. And with condos, you're talking about, you know, deferred maintenance and not running the budget properly for the past 30 or 40 years in many cases. And now it's all coming to a head and people are going to have to pay for this. When you own your own house, you have to run your own budget. And clearly what we can see from the way people's finances are run in this country, that most people don't even know how to run a budget, because you have all these people with credit card debt. You know, the average person has like $6,000 to $8,000 in credit card debt right now. People finance everything. So you're going to tell me people who do that are smart with their money and are going to be ready for these surprise expenses when they own a house? No, they're not going to be. And this to me is yet another reason, another win for renters right now, guys. You know, a lot of renters have been desperate to become homeowners over the past couple of years and, you know, been pressured and FOMO into, you know, why are you wasting your rent? You know, you're stupid for renting. You should be a homeowner and all of this. Well, who's laughing now, right? Because yeah, you might have to deal with some increases as a renter, but you can easily just pick up and move to a new unit and rent somewhere else and get a better deal, especially now that rental inventory is exploding across the country. This is a pretty good time to be a renter. So don't let anybody make you feel stupid if you're renting right now, especially if you're paying less than what it would cost to own a similar home than what you're renting, because right now you're avoiding all these increases. And a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, that's a myth too, Michael, because landlords will just raise the rent to compensate for all these expenses. Yeah, well, guess what? A lot of them try to do that, and those are all the empty units you see sitting vacant that are asking $1,000 or $1,500 a month too much, because that's how much they need to cover their expenses, except there's cheaper rentals available elsewhere, and tenants will choose those. They just won't rent your place and it will stay vacant. So you can charge whatever you want as a landlord, but at the end of the day, if it's not fair market value, you're not going to get it rented, guys. So this whole idea that landlords continually raise the cost with all these expenses is not true. They will try, but there comes to a point where you cannot raise it any higher than what the market will bear. You know, if you have a house for rent that's $2,000 a month, but all the neighboring houses are for rent for $1,600, and you're saying, if I rent it for less than $2,000, I'm losing money. Well, how much are you losing every month when the house sits empty? Every month you're losing $2,000 a month. So this whole idea and this whole argument that landlords will continually just jack up your rent to compensate for this is not going to hold up, guys. So if I were you right now, I would be extremely careful if you're going to be buying a house, a mobile home, a condo, anything, guys, unless it's raw land with no property on it, where you don't have to have insurance and you don't have to worry about major property tax spikes or anything like that. I would be very skeptical and concerned right now about where your future expenses are going. And if you don't know this before making a purchase, these are the kind of things that are going to happen to you. You're going to get blindsided and say, oh, I didn't know. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.